All right. First, I want to say thank you for having me and for doing all the work that you're doing and the attention that you're putting on Palestine and Palestinians, especially in this time. It's really amazing to see so many communities in very different parts of the world come together and um, work on something that has been much needed for many, many years. Um, One thing I've learned a lot firsthand in the last few months in particular is just how deeply misunderstood Palestinians are, especially in the West. Um, and when you listen to the mainstream media, educational institutions, you can see that there's a certain narrative that's being perpetuated and a certain set of habits that just don't give the Palestinians a voice. There's always somebody else that is translating Palestinians to the world. And you rarely get a chance to listen and hear directly from Palestinians, especially ones on the ground. And that's quite intentional, it seems. Like there's always needs to be this someone that is inserted in the middle to try to help the West or whoever it is understand what the Palestinians are actually saying when they're saying something quite different if you listen to them directly. Um, I'd read the work by Edward Said on Orientalism a while ago, and it is interesting to read it again in the last few months and reflect on uh, how to see it work in real time with that lens in mind, kind of to see how the West is trying to view the Palestinians as Orientalists who need someone to translate them. And Palestinians are not the only people to experience Orientalism, but they've paid a very dear price for many decades. And the latest chapter is what we're seeing in the Gaza genocide over the last 9 months. And here I want to pause and emphasize just how important your role as English language educators in in this type of situation, um, and particularly for people who are from a place like Palestine. That's quite misunderstood, I would say. When I learned English growing up in the West Bank, like I said, my family's originally from Ramlah, and they were evicted from there. Ramlah is now located inside the borders of Israel, and my grandparents had to move to what's now called the West Bank during the Nakba. But at any rate, when I was learning English in the West Bank, I used to look at it as a tool for me to understand the West. It was more about how do I fit in when I communicate. I wasn't taught that it could be and it will become my responsibility to become a storyteller and an advocate, an ambassador for Palestine and for its people when I decide to interact or move elsewhere. And I think I want to urge you to try to put on that hat and when you're working with your students, especially from underrepresented backgrounds, to help them see their education and their ability to communicate in the English language as a tool that can help uplift not only themselves but also their communities, their families, and slowly but surely bring change into the world by being able to um, help everybody see that we have so much in common between all of us. If only we can uh, stop and listen to the people and not to what the institutions are trying to let us think we understand. Um, And with that, I want to share with you a couple of my earliest memories as a child. When I was 3 years of age, I lived in a refugee camp for displaced Palestinians. And I still distinctly remember late night in December. Uh, I was eagerly waiting on our balcony, waiting for Santa to come. And I was determined that day that I'm going to catch him in the act. And I had a whole plan. Um, However, uh, my father, who was the Santa in disguise, was fully ahead of me, and I was not able to catch him that day. Um, uh, I still remember having our Christmas dinner and wrapping my presents, and still wishing that I had caught Santa. Um, and and that was it. I never did. And a couple months after that, I had struck a new friendship with a small sheep in our neighborhood, and one of our neighbors had it in their garden, and I decided to call him Happy Sheep. And every day in the morning, my father and I would walk past him on our way to kindergarten, and I would stop, try to feed him, and play for a little bit. And there was one week where we had school off. It was Eid al-Adha, which is a Muslim festival. And one of the rituals is to sacrifice um, uh, an animal, could be sheep, goat, whatever, to try to distribute the the meat over to poor folks in your neighborhood, some friends and family, and keep some for yourselves. What I hadn't known at the time was that Happy Sheep was allocated towards that sacrifice. And I on the first day back to school, I was rattled and shocked to find out that he was no longer with us, and I cried myself all the way to school and back. And uh, yeah, that was a rough couple of days. But then, you might be wondering what's the point of what I'm trying to say here. Um, I was asked a few months ago, early in the Gaza genocide, like what is unique about Palestinian identity and culture? What does it mean to you to be Palestinian? And I had initially a hard time putting words to it, but one element that I kept coming back to every way I try to answer that question was that the Palestinian culture and people are unique in the sense that the heritage and the history of it is built around being a melting pot of the Abrahamic religions. People are so aware and interconnected of the culture being uh, Muslim and Christian and Jewish all at the same time. And as a Palestinian, you feel very connected to it and very proud. You know that this is your heritage, that this place is so holy uh, and important for billions of people around the world, and it becomes part of who you are. And those religious aspects become very steeped into your daily lives and culture and interaction, even if you are not very religious. And and no matter what, you are exposed to elements of the various religions because the population is quite mixed. And I was personally fortunate enough to grow up in a family of mixed Muslim and Christian faith. So that's why we were celebrating all of these holidays, Christmas, Eid, Ramadan, what have you, which was cool as a kid to be able to just celebrate all of the holidays. But what was interesting is to be able to learn more firsthand about both Christian and Muslim faith from my family members in my school, and that helps me understand much better how Palestinians lived as one for centuries. And my grandparents often, who passed away um, many years ago, would tell us a lot of stories about how Palestine was a place that everybody lived together side by side, and they embraced the multi-religious nature of the society. And it didn't matter who was ruling over the region. There was a bond between the people who lived in Palestine that just tightly knit everyone into the fabric of the society. And there was that mutual respect that everybody had for everyone else. And of course, that started to change with the rise of Zionism and the idea of turning that land into an ethno-state. And definitely from stories that my grandma told me, she's from the town of Safad, which was a heavily mixed Jewish and Muslim town in her days. Things were very cohesive in the past, before the idea that we're going to section off the land and give it to one people, not the others. And with that kind of clarity, I will say that there's a lot of, or more, I would say most of the people I grew up around have a very clear distinction between what is Zionism and what is Judaism, simply because you're aware of the history and how people used to live together, and because you as a Palestinian are still living in a multi-religious community, you start to absorb that truth, and everybody knows that it's not a war of religions, despite the continuous attempts by many people to frame it in that light, and that's quite unfortunate. But it's one way that has been used to perpetuate the issue and try to get the Western part of the world to not associate themselves with Palestinians, because they're not, they don't want to be associated with, say, Muslims, and that's been quite a successful strategy, I would say, on the parts of everyone that has not wanted to see Palestinians get their self-determination. I want to shift to another common trope that I keep seeing in the West, and especially in the media, that keeps getting perpetuated about the Palestinian society, which is the status of women, of Palestinian women. Through the genocide in Gaza, we've seen a lot of attempts to pinkwash what's happening, and there's a lot of false assumptions that get built up. I'll tell you, I saw Palestine through the eyes of my single mom, who raised me and my brother while having a full-time job, trying to do everything. And also through the eyes of my grandma, who outlived my grandfather by about 25 years, living by herself in the town of Jenin, about 40 miles and many Israeli checkpoints away from the rest of her children. So she was quite independent, as well, tending to her garden, going to the market. Everybody in the town knew who she was and respected her. And I feel grateful to have the two of them as role models that I look up to. And honestly, whenever somebody says the phrase "strong and independent woman," I'm always thinking of the images of my grandma and my mom. And what I'll say is that when you often hear the narrative that Palestinians abuse their women and what have you, I think a lot of it is an attempt to invoke a narrative that is not genuine. It's something that it's a technique that's used to discredit Palestinians and paint them as backwards people in order for you to suppress your empathy towards Palestinians. It's not coming from a place of care towards these women. And can say the same about the LGBTQ community as well. But it's coming from a place of wanting to silence or like I said, suppress the empathy towards Palestinians. And Palestinian women have been a central piece of the resistance and what's called Sumud. In the First Intifada, for example, women were a really big part of organizing the popular committees that helped the society come together and organize. And it was very powerful to see. It's interesting to be in the States right now when we're having the Supreme Court reversing Roe v. Wade, and we have abortion rights now being put to question, and it shows you the irony of trying to paint the Palestinian society and women in a way that that's so negative. And like I said, it's something that feels not very genuine when all of this is happening around us, even in the United States. And and I'll touch on one more item just before wrapping up. I work in the tech industry, and it's been an interesting place to observe the genocide unfold in Gaza while being on the inside. What was and what remains very unique and rather new in what's happening in Gaza is that for the first time in history, perhaps, we are having the ability to live stream a war or a genocide. We're able to see it live for ourselves without the media intervention, and we're able to see and hear from the people on the ground. And that's never happened before. And for me, it's been an interesting reflection, having built my career around designing cameras for smartphones, to see that they've introduced a new element in that I would say has had a profound positive impact in a way for this particular situation. As I think if it wasn't for the advancement of technologies and being able to transmit and communicate out of Gaza, who knows what would be happening? We would find out in a few months that things are much worse than what is happening. And this new element, the technology that's been introduced, is a new is something completely new in war zones, and hopefully looking ahead, that these technologies that were designed to connect everybody and help us in communicating and documenting the moment is going to be one element that helps us hold ourselves and the world and the governments accountable. Because now there is undisputed evidence that we're able to rely on and mobilize around. But also, it's a tool for us, and as was the case, to mobilize support and have people sympathize and understand when otherwise they wouldn't be able to do that. And that hopefully can help us breaking down some of the barriers the mainstream media and a lot of the governments have erected around many issues around the world. And for Palestine and Palestinians, that this is a real problem that is hopefully now starting to erode, now that people are able to see and connect directly with Palestinians. But at the same time, you see the extreme amounts of censorship and silencing that the tech industry is trying to put on a lot of the journalists and influencers who are speaking up for Palestine. So we know it's going to be a long journey before we get to anything meaningful. But it feels like the Pandora's box has been opened, and it's hard to think about how you will undo all of that now that we all have access to things and tools to communicate and record and bring us together across continents that was not possible in the past. And it helps us tell our stories and connect with everybody, no matter where they're from. And that takes me back to where I started with the power of storytelling and the amazing work that you as educators are doing to help uplift and bring up a new generation of children who are able to communicate better and hopefully are going to be better storytellers that can help us see a better world in the future. And that's all I had. Thank you for listening.